I bought plane tickets for the entire family, but at the airport, my daughter-in-law announced, "We gave your ticket to my mama. The grandkids love her more." My son agreed. I nodded silently and walked away, and a minute later, I did something that made them beg me to cancel their trip. Friends, before we dive into this story, I have a small request. If you appreciate true life stories and justice, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And write in the comments which city you are listening from. I am always interested to know how far my words travel. Happy listening. Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. This sound always had a dual effect on me. On one hand, the anticipation of flight. On the other, a light, barely perceptible anxiety common to people of my age who are used to controlling every little detail. I stood slightly away from the check-in counter, clutching a leather folder with documents to my chest. Inside lay 5 passports and printouts that had cost me half a year's profit from my modest investments. The Maldives, Azure Bay, not just a hotel, but a private, closed club resort. I had been planning this for 6 months. Officially, it was a gift to my grandchildren for the holidays. Unofficially, it was my jubilee. 65 years old, I didn't want feasts, toasts, and the fake smiles of distant relatives. I wanted the ocean, silence, and my family beside me. I paid for everything: business class flights, the seaplane transfer, an overwater villa with a private pool. I wanted Sterling, my son, to feel like a king, and his wife, Valencia, to finally stop complaining about being tired. But now, standing under the cold light of the terminal, I felt the air around us turn heavy, like before a thunderstorm. Sterling stood a few yards away from me, buried in his phone. He shifted nervously from foot to foot, constantly adjusting the collar of his shirt. He was avoiding my gaze. Since the morning, when the Uber Black arrived to pick us up, he had been silent. I wrote it off as travel stress. Men often get nervous before flights, even if they don't admit it. Valencia, however, was behaving differently. She was whispering. She stood next to her mother, Odessa, speaking to her quickly and heatedly, covering her mouth with her hand. Odessa, my son's mother-in-law, a loud, flashy woman who loved leopard prints and gold bangles that jingled with her every movement. Her presence here was a mystery to me. I hadn't invited her. My budget was for 5 people. Me, Sterling, Valencia, and the 2 grandkids, the twins. When Odessa appeared at the terminal entrance with a massive rolling suitcase, I assumed she had just come to see her babies off. That was her style. Create a fuss, cry a little for the road, give a pile of unsolicited advice. But the suitcase was too big for someone just saying goodbye, and hanging on it was a priority tag. Ms. Eulalia Vaughn. Valencia's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. She was smiling, but her eyes remained cold and calculating. She was wearing an expensive cream-colored suit, the very one I suspected that had cost a chunk of the money I transferred to Sterling for business development. "It's time. Check-in is already open." We moved toward the counter. The grandkids, 7-year-old Cairo and Zuri, were running around the suitcases, oblivious to the tension among the adults. I felt a cold knot growing in my chest. My intuition, honed by years of working as a chief financial officer, was screaming, "The deal is dirty. Audit the assets." But I brushed it off. This was family. My son, my blood. The young woman at the counter, impeccably polite in her airline uniform, looked up at us. "Good afternoon. Your passports, please?" I took a step forward, intending to pull the documents from my folder, but Valencia was faster. She deftly wedged herself between me and the counter, as if accidentally pushing me aside with her shoulder. "Here you go," she sang out, laying a stack of passports on the counter. I froze. I saw only 4 navy blue booklets. My passport remained in my folder. The 5th document, which Valencia handed to the employee with a triumphant smile, was Odessa's passport. "Valencia," I said quietly. My voice didn't tremble, but inside, everything collapsed. "You made a mistake. That is your mother's passport. I have mine." Valencia turned to me slowly. Her face adopted an expression of mournful sympathy, the kind used when announcing the death of a distant relative whose inheritance has already been eyed. "Oh, Miss Eulalia, Ma." She addressed me the way she only did when she needed something. We talked it over. Basically, we decided it would be better if Odessa came along. The terminal was noisy. They were announcing boarding for a flight to Dubai. Someone laughed. A child cried. But for me, a vacuum of silence descended. "What do you mean better?" I asked, looking not at her, but at my son. Sterling was still looking at the floor, studying the toes of his expensive loafers. "But surely you understand?" Valencia lowered her voice, pretending to care about my reputation. "The flight is long, 14 hours. Your blood pressure. Last month you complained about a migraine, and over there it's the heat, the humidity. Doctors really don't recommend drastic climate changes at your age." "My blood pressure is normal," I stated clearly. "And this is my birthday." "Exactly!" Odessa chimed in, entering the conversation. She adjusted the massive necklace on her neck. "Layli, honey, why do you need this stress? You'll rest at home, in the quiet, watch your shows, and I'll help with the grandkids. You know, they've gotten so used to me lately. Cairo said just yesterday, 'I want Grandma Dessa to go.'" She was lying. I saw it in the shifting eyes of the twins, who had gone quiet, sensing the conflict. "Sterling." I spoke his name like a final argument, like a demand. My son finally raised his head. In his eyes, I saw what I had feared seeing all my life: cowardice. He was my creation, my project, into which I had poured everything, but somewhere I had made a fatal mistake. He wasn't a man. He was an appendage to his wife's ambitions. "Ma, come on," he mumbled, shrugging his shoulders. "Val is right. It'll be hard on you and Odessa. She's more energetic, and the kids have more fun with her. Don't be offended, okay? We'll bring you a souvenir. It's just going to be better for everyone this way. For everyone." I looked at them. At Valencia, barely suppressing a triumphant smirk. At Odessa, already mentally trying on a swimsuit at my villa. At Sterling, who betrayed me for peace in the bedroom. They had planned it all. They knew I would pay for the tickets. They knew I wouldn't make a scene in a public place. They counted on my upbringing, on my pride, on my habit of swallowing insults silently so as not to air dirty laundry. They thought I was just a wallet with the function of a grandmother. I exhaled slowly. The anger that might have made another woman scream and stomp her feet transformed within me into an icy clarity. It was the same feeling I experienced before shutting down an unprofitable branch. Pity vanished, only accounting remained. "I understand," I said calmly, so calmly that Valencia even blinked in surprise. I opened the folder and took out the printouts: hotel reservations, transfers, insurance, the entire package of documents without which their trip would just be a walk around the airport. "Here are the vouchers." I placed the papers on the counter next to Odessa's passport. "Since you've decided everything, I won't get in the way." "You're a miracle, Ma." Sterling exhaled with relief and even leaned in to peck me on the cheek, but I took a barely noticeable step back. "Have a good flight," I said. I turned and walked toward the exit. I heard Valencia giggle behind my back. "See, I told you. She'd understand everything. Old folks need their rest." I walked through the crowd. My back was straight as a guitar string. The glass doors parted before me, letting in the cool Atlanta air. I didn't call an Uber. Instead, I took out my phone. In my contacts, I found a number I hadn't used in about 3 years. "Mr. Abernathy, personal banker." Call. "Ms. Vaughn?" A surprised, slightly raspy male voice answered. "Didn't expect this. Glad to hear from you." "Hello, Julian," I said, watching another airliner take off into the sky above ATL. "Do you remember we discussed the golden parachute protocol in case I decided to abruptly change the family asset management strategy?" "Of course I remember, but you said that was an extreme measure." "The time has come, Julian. Initiate the protocol." "Yes, immediately." They are going through passport control right now." I ended the call and smiled for the first time in that hour. Truly smiled. I didn't go home. Instead, I went up to the second floor of the terminal, to that bar with panoramic windows where business people usually kill time before long trips. I took a table right by the glass. From here, the airfield was in full view, a huge mechanism gridlocked with lights where every screw knew its place. Unlike my family. "Double Hennessy," I told the waiter who approached. He glanced briefly at my severe gray coat, nodded, and vanished. I watched as the huge jet, carrying my son, my daughter-in-law, and her triumphant mother, slowly taxied to the runway. They were probably already unfastening their belts, anticipating champagne. Sterling most likely stretched his legs into the aisle. He always did that, believing rules were written for economy class. The waiter placed the snifter before me. The amber liquid swayed, catching the glint of the airfield lights. I took a sip. The warmth spread through my chest, but didn't melt the form there half an hour ago. I took out my phone. The screen lit up, reflecting in the glass. The Private Capital app loaded instantly, greeting me with a black minimalist interface. For years, I lied to myself. I called it support, a startup, help for a young family. I let Sterling think his consulting firm was a successful business. But the only client of that firm, in essence, was me. I ran fictitious consultations through his accounts, paid for non-existent reports, just so he would feel like a man, a provider. His platinum card was linked to my main account. He never saw the real bills for the apartment, for the Grandkids private school, for the lease on his black SUV. I wasn't a mother. I was an ATM with a heartbeat. And today, this ATM decided to close for maintenance. My finger hovered over the Family Access Management icon. Two names were listed there, Sterling Vaughn and Valencia Vaughn. The limits were set to unlimited. I chuckled. What irony. Boundless love converted into unlimited credit, and they decided it would always be this way. I pressed Edit. Field. Credit limit. I erased the infinity symbol and entered a single digit, 0. Then I went to the current transaction section. There it was, the largest sum for today, $25,000. Resort prepayment. The payment went through 2 hours ago as a gift to family. In banking terminology, this meant I was voluntarily covering the expenses of third parties. I pressed the Dispute Transaction button. In the drop-down menu of reasons, I selected Unauthorized Overdraft, Expense Classification Error. The system issued a warning. Attention! Changing the category will result in the immediate revocation of the bank's guarantee obligations to the merchant. The amount will be billed to the additional cardholder as a personal debt. Are you sure? I looked out the window. The plane lifted off the ground, carrying them to the paradise they had stolen. Yes, I said aloud and pressed Confirm. The screen blinked green. Changes accepted. Link to additional cards severed. I knew what would happen next. I could see it as clearly as if I were sitting in the adjacent seat. Somewhere up there at 30,000 feet, a flight attendant in a red uniform with a practiced smile was rolling a cart with drinks. In business class, alcohol is included in the price, but Sterling always loved ordering something special that wasn't on the menu, just to show off. "A bottle of Cristal, please," he probably said, casually extending that platinum card. Valencia was likely already taking a selfie with a glass, and Odessa was loudly admiring the service, glancing at the neighbors. The flight attendant inserted the card into the terminal. A second of waiting. Sterling smiled, anticipating the first sip of freedom from maternal supervision. The terminal would have beeped, short and nasty. Red indicator. "I apologize, sir." The flight attendant's voice became a bit drier. "Transaction declined. The terminal writes, card confiscated. Lost." "That's nonsense." Sterling must have laughed, waving it off casually. "The chip got demagnetized. Try again. Or enter it manually. It's unlimited." She tried again. Same result. "Sir, the bank is blocking the transaction. We need another form of payment." The smile slid off Sterling's face. He probably frowned, feeling the other passengers starting to look at him. He reached into his wallet, pulled out the second card, the reserve one I gave Valencia for household expenses. "Try this one." The flight attendant took the plastic. Waiting again. Beep again. Decline. "Sir, insufficient funds." "This is a bank error." Sterling's voice cracked into a squeak. "I'm going to complain. I have millions in there." "Unfortunately, sir, I cannot provide you with the service." The flight attendant took the bottle back onto the cart. "And I will have to ask you to pay for the already opened snacks in cash. Otherwise, upon arrival, the police will meet us." I finished the cognac in one gulp, feeling the harshness of the alcohol finally match the harshness of my intentions. The plane turned into a small dot in the sky. Their flight had only just begun, and they were already falling. I paid for the cognac in cash, leaving a generous tip, and headed for the airport exit. My phone was silent. There was no signal on the plane, giving me a few more hours of blissful silence. I got into my car, which I had left in long-term parking, and drove slowly toward the city. The interior smelled of leather and my perfume, but I sensed the phantom smell of tropical humidity and salt. I knew what was happening on the other side of the world, at Valana International Airport in Malé. They landed. Sterling, Valencia, the kids, and Odessa stepped out of the cool cabin into the stifling, enveloping heat of the Maldives. After the incident with the cards on board, their mood was likely spoiled, but not destroyed. Sterling, the master of self-deception, convinced himself and his wife that it was just a technical glitch, some error in the bank's security system that I would, of course, fix as soon as I saw the missed calls. They went through passport control and headed to the transfer desk for the Azure Bay Hotel. Usually, guests of this level are met with iced towels soaked in lemongrass and fresh coconuts. The captain of the private boat in a snow-white uniform should have personally taken their luggage. But this time, the captain stood with his arms crossed over his chest, looking not at them, but at his tablet. "Mr. Vaughn?" he asked, not even trying to fake a welcoming smile. "Yes, that's us." Valencia tried to slip forward, adjusting her wide-brimmed hat. "We had a terrible misunderstanding on the plane, but we are so glad to finally—" "Your reservation is canceled," the captain interrupted her, not looking up. A pause hung in the air. The noise of arriving tourists, the lapping of water against the pier, everything suddenly became deafeningly loud. "What do you mean canceled?" Sterling tried to give his voice authority, but it came out pathetic. "Do you know who my mother is? Eulalia Vaughn. The owner of the primary account, Madame Eulalia, revoked the authorization 40 minutes ago." The captain finally looked at them. In his gaze, one could read the weariness of a man who had seen too many rich loafers whose credit cards suddenly turned into pumpkins. "I cannot take you on board. The boat is only for guests with a confirmed reservation." Valencia flushed. Her face went splotchy red, contrasting with her white linen dress. "You have no right!" she shrieked, attracting the attention of the line. "I will sue! This is arbitrary! We are with children! You are obligated to take us!" "I am obligated to follow the bank and hotel instructions, ma'am," the captain cut her off. He turned to the next group of tourists, smiled at them in a way he hadn't smiled at Sterling a minute ago, and gestured for them to board. "Please, welcome to paradise." Odessa, who until this moment had been silently fanning herself, suddenly groaned. "Oh, I feel faint. Val, do something. My heart is going to stop. And where is this damn boat? I'm not going to stand here in the heat." Sterling was frantically poking at his phone screen. "Mama isn't picking up," he hissed in panic. "It's ringing, but she's not answering." "She's doing it on purpose." Valencia angrily kicked her suitcase. "The old witch just decided to play on our nerves. She's offended that we didn't take her." "Whatever. She'll pout for a bit and turn the money back on. She'll get bored without us in an hour." Sterling wiped sweat from his forehead. "Okay, stay calm. It's just a glitch or her whim. We'll get to the hotel ourselves and sort everything out at the reception. The manager knows me." He looked around, searching for an alternative. The luxurious speedboats of other hotels were departing one after another, whisking away happy tourists. For them, only one option remained. "Over there!" Sterling pointed to a shabby pier off to the side, where locals and backpackers were crowded. "Water taxi." This wasn't a high-speed boat with air conditioning and champagne. It was an old ferry smelling of diesel and fish. Wooden benches, peeling paint, and cramped quarters. "I am not sitting in that," Odessa declared, scrunching her nose in disgust. "We have no choice, Mama," Valencia barked at her. "Get in or stay at the airport." They loaded onto the ferry under the scorching sun. Valencia broke a nail trying to drag her mother's heavy suitcase on board because porters weren't provided here. The grandkids whined, demanding water and a bathroom. Sterling sat squeezed onto a hard bench, praying that no one he knew would see him in this tub. An hour and a half of shaking over the waves. Sprays of salt water flew into their faces, ruining Valencia's blowout and Odessa's makeup. When the ferry finally docked at the technical pier of Azure Bay, far from the grand entrance, they looked like shipwreck survivors. They were met not by a welcoming committee with drums, but by the hotel manager, Mr. Rashid. He held a folder, and his demeanor was strictly business. "Mr. Vaughn," he nodded dryly, "we didn't expect you on this flight, but since you've arrived—" "Rashid!" Sterling rushed to him like a lifeline. "Thank God! There's some monstrous mistake with the bank. Mama mixed something up. Give us the keys to the villa. We'll check in, shower, and then I'll settle everything with the payment." Rashid didn't even move. He opened the folder and took out a sheet of paper. "I'm afraid that is impossible, sir. Since the corporate club member, Miss Eulalia Vaughn, is not personally present at check-in, the conditions of your reservation are void. The friends and family discount is no longer valid." "What?" Valencia froze. "What difference does it make if she's here or not?" "A huge difference, madam. It is a condition of the contract. Without her, you are regular guests off the street, and considering the high season—" Rashid paused as if savoring the moment. "The accommodation cost has been recalculated at the current rate. That is $3,000 a night. Payment up front for the entire stay." "$3,000?" Odessa's eyes popped out. "That's robbery." "And one more thing," Rashid added, ignoring Odessa's wails. "Your overwater villa has already been given to other guests who made a prepayment. We have only 2 standard rooms left with a view of the garden, next to the generator." Sterling went pale. He stood on the pier in a shirt soaked with sweat, listening to the hum of the generator in the distance, and for the first time, it seemed, began to understand that this whim of his mother's might cost him much more than just a spoiled mood. "But we don't have that kind of money with us," he whispered. Rashid smiled politely but coldly. "Then I can suggest you wait for the return ferry. It will be tomorrow morning." At that moment, I was parking my car at my home in Buckhead. The silence of the suburban evening was exactly the medicine I needed. I knew the phone in my purse was about to start exploding with messages, but I wasn't in a hurry to take it out. First, mint tea and repotting the ficus. It had been cramped in the old pot for a long time, just like me. I entered my empty house, kicked off my heels, and felt the hardwood floor cool my feet. It was a pleasant sensation, the feeling of a home that now belonged only to me. No childish screams, no complaints from Valencia, no TV eternally turned on by Sterling. I went into the kitchen, put the kettle on, and took out a bag of soil. The ficus in the corner of the living room truly looked depressing. Roots were already protruding, demanding freedom. While the kettle was boiling, I took the phone out of my bag. The screen lit up, illuminating the semi-darkness of the kitchen. 37 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and an endless string of texts in the messenger. I opened the chat with Valencia. The messages flowed in a continuous stream of hysteria, all caps with a bunch of exclamation marks. "Mama, what are you doing? They won't check us in. They want $40,000 deposit. We don't have that money on the cards. You blocked everything. The kids are crying. Mama, you are torturing the grandkids. Pick up the phone immediately. Odessa is having a heart attack. I chuckled. A heart attack hadn't stopped Odessa from demanding the business lounge an hour ago. I took a sip of tea, then opened the photo gallery on my phone, found the photo of the contract I signed 6 months ago when buying the tour. That specific clause in fine print on the 3rd page. I took a screenshot, circled the phrase non-refundable and non-transferable in red marker, and sent it to Valencia, followed by a short message. Sweetie, the ticket was in my name. You decided to use it differently. Now you manage your vacation yourselves. Have a pleasant evening, sweetie. I put the phone down, but not to calm down. I was just getting started. The ficus would wait. Now I needed to uproot larger weeds. I sat at my laptop. I knew the password to the family cloud by heart, although Valencia was sure I didn't even know how to use it. To them, I was a grandmother with a flip phone soul, even though I was the one who set up their entire home network. In the Documents folder, I found what I was looking for. Scanned copies of property deeds, an office in Midtown Atlanta, 1,200 square feet. A prestigious business center, panoramic windows, oak furniture. Sterling called it the headquarters of his consulting empire. He loved bringing friends there, treating them to whiskey and discoursing on market trends. But in the owner column stood my name, Eulalia Vaughn. I bought this office 5 years ago. When Sterling decided to start his business, I put it in my name, telling my son, "Let this be your insurance, but legally it's safer this way." He didn't even argue then. He was too busy choosing a leather director's chair. Next to it lay the scan of the title to his black Escalade, also mine. I opened my email. A letter to my attorney was already sitting in drafts. I attached the documents and pressed send. The text was short and dry. Dear Mr. Roberts, please prepare documents for the transfer of ownership of the property at address and the vehicle to Real Estate LLC for subsequent urgent liquidation. You have the power of attorney for the sale. Act immediately. Eulalia. This wasn't just a blow to the wallet. It was a blow to Sterling's identity. Without the office, he was nobody. Without the car, he was a pedestrian. His entire life was a decoration built on my foundation. And I had just pulled out that foundation. I picked up the phone and typed a message to my son. Sterling, I've been thinking. At my age, one needs to simplify life, get rid of excess ballast. I decided to sell the office. Since you are such a successful businessman, you can surely rent something suitable yourself or work from home. You have 24 hours to move your personal belongings. Then the locks will be changed. Eulalia. Send. And now let's transport 6,000 miles south. Sterling stood in the hotel lobby, trying to catch a weak signal from the local Wi-Fi. Chaos reigned around him. Valencia was screaming at Rashid, demanding to speak to upper management. Odessa sat on a suitcase, fanning herself with a brochure, loudly proclaiming that such a mess never happens in Jamaica. The children, tired and hungry, were tugging at their father's pant leg. Daddy, we want to eat. Daddy, when are we going to the pool? Sterling swatted them away like annoying flies. His phone beeped. He opened the message, read it. His face, already pale from stress, turned gray, earthy. What is it? Valencia, noticing the change in his face, stopped mid-sentence. She transferred the money? Sterling looked up at her. In his eyes was not just fear. There was the panic of a man who suddenly realized he is standing on the edge of a precipice with no parachute on his back. The office, he wheezed. She's selling the office. What office? Valencia didn't understand. Your office? It's not mine, Valencia. Suddenly he screamed, breaking into a squeal. It never was mine. She put everything in her name. And the car, too. She writes that she is selling it all to realtors right now. Are you an idiot? Valencia snatched the phone from him. How could you let her put everything in her name? You said you were the owner. I thought it was a formality. She's my mother. Mother? Valencia threw the phone at his chest. Your mother is a monster. She is destroying us. Do you realize that without the office, they won't give you that loan for expansion? You have the office as collateral for the new project. Sterling grabbed his head and slid down the wall to the floor, right onto the marble tiles of the lobby. If she sells the office, the bank will demand early repayment of the loan. And he gulped. I have a cash gap there. They'll declare me bankrupt. Odessa, hearing the word bankrupt, stopped fanning herself. So, she said, getting up from the suitcase. Her voice suddenly became hard and businesslike, without any baby talk. That means there is no money, and there won't be any. Mama, wait! Valencia rushed to her husband. Call her. Call and beg. Say anything. Get on your knees. Record. Let her stop the sale. Sterling pressed the call button with trembling fingers. The rings were long, drawn out. I looked at the screen of my phone lying on the kitchen table. The name Son blinked on the display. I sipped my tea. It was delicious. Earl Grey. I didn't answer. Let him suffer. Let him realize. The lesson had only just begun. The phone fell silent, but only for a second, to explode with a new trill. I looked at the screen, feeling something inside me finally turn to stone. Valencia called, then Sterling again, then an unknown number, evidently Odessa. I turned off the sound, flipped the phone screen down, and returned to repotting the ficus. Hands in the earth, the smell of dampness and peat. This was soothing. It was creative work, unlike what I'd been doing for the past 20 years, raising parasites. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, paradise was finally turning into hell. They had been sitting in the lobby for 3 hours. The air conditioners were working at full power, but it didn't cool the atmosphere. Sterling sat on the floor, head in his hands. Valencia paced the space from the check-in counter to the exit, furiously clicking her heels. We can't